She was sleeping in her room on her mattress, which were on the floor. And then they found her on the floor in the bathroom to figure out how to stop the bleeding. He wanted to get her body temperature way down. And then something happened and she just punched.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
It's early in the morning on June 4th, 2022. People are waking up at an apartment complex in Gilbert, Arizona, expecting to experience what they always do, a quiet morning with people getting out to get their walk or run in before the summer temperatures soar later in the day. This complex is in a safe and affluent area and suburb outside of Phoenix, off Ray Road and Santan Village Parkway. So it took people by surprise when they came outside to a bunch of police cars because no one had heard anything suspicious. They find out a girl had been shot and died at the hospital. Amaris Gomez Olahi lives at the complex.
It's really scary to hear that somebody in my apartment complex was like a victim to that, and she felt safe in her own apartment, I'm sure, and you just never know, and so it's really scary and you have to be careful. Always have your guard up.
Investigators eventually discover the victim is 19-year-old Rachel Hansen, and that she called 911 herself. Yet nearly 2 years later, her family is left with no answers. But Kim Hansen is sure of one thing about her daughter's death.
No, I don't think it's random at all. I just don't know if Rachel was the target or the other girl.
Let's rewind about 15 years.
It was in February of 2009, and I got a phone call from CPS about this little girl that was available for adoption. Parental rights had been severed, and we had her half-sibling in our family that we had adopted as a baby. And so CPS contacted us and just asked if we would like to adopt her, and with no questions asked, sight unseen, we said yes.
Kim Hansen and her husband, Todd, had fostered and adopted several children for many years. It was just in their blood. They loved it and loved their kids. They didn't bat an eye when Rachel came into their lives at 6 years old. Soon, they'd learn how full of personality she was.
She was just so full of life, so funky and happy and just ready and wanting to live in a family and be able to do all the things that she had not experienced before.
But as is often, and sadly, the case, Rachel experienced some trauma from her 6 years in foster care. As she got older, sometimes Kim would catch her daughter staring out the window into their pasture. Rachel would say, "Mommy, I want to get a horse." Kim and Todd had horses before, so they thought maybe a horse would help heal that part of her heart affected by those years before she came into their family. When Rachel was 12, they got her horse named Dash. And so began her lifestyle and hobby of horse training. It became a huge part of her life and eventually a business.
That was her job. She started out training for other people, riding horses that they were having trouble with, getting the horses to learn how to behave better. And people just hired her all the time to work with their horses, also just to exercise them. And so she started a business about a year before and created a website and advertised, and then she also got into buying and selling horses.
Rachel graduated high school a year early with a full-ride scholarship to Northern Arizona University, but decided to forego that to stay closer to home with her family and continue the work she had already started building in the horse and equestrian community. She also was recently engaged, excited to plan a wedding with her fiancé.
She got her real estate license and did that all on her own, paid for it, studied, passed all the exams and everything because she wanted to sell horse property. So that was the next avenue that she was moving into, and that's why she was moving into the apartment, because she'd been working on a ranch training, and she wanted to bring her horse home here, and her apartment was just 2 miles down the street from her.
Rachel had been subleasing out her Gilbert apartment while she lived in a casita on the ranch with her horse, working there too. But she decided she wanted her own space back, and it made sense as she continued her real estate journey.
About a week before, she had left the ranch, wasn't going to work there anymore, told the people that she was subleasing to that they needed to move out, and she had moved all of her belongings from the place, the little casita or whatever where she was living on the ranch, back to our home. So everything was in our garage while she was working to get the apartment cleaned up and move back into it.
Kim was going out of town to Indiana to visit family and babysit her young grandkids. Rachel only had her mattress and box stream back in the apartment and a few of her clothes, but otherwise, most of her stuff was still at her parents' house in the transition. Kim tells her,
"Stay at home in your bedroom till I get home and I'll help you clean it, and then we'll get you all moved back in." But she was very independent and strong-willed, and she was like, "That's okay, Mom. I'm just going to clean it, and I'll stay there, and then you can help me when you get back."
If anything, Kim was expecting to get an updated phone call about how the cleaning was going. Instead, she got a call from her husband the morning of June 4th, after he got unexpected visitors at the front door.
2 Gilbert officers knocked on the door at 7 a.m. We were not notified at all. Before that, she was shot at 2 a.m., transported to Chandler Regional, where they worked on her for 3 hours and 15 minutes to try and save her. We didn't know any of that. So they knocked at 7 a.m. on our front door and came in and sat down and told my husband that she'd been shot and that they had worked to save her, but they weren't able to. So she had passed at 5:15.
Rachel, dead? They couldn't fathom how or why. They had to learn details from the surgeon who worked on Rachel for hours at Chandler Regional Hospital.
She was sleeping in her room on her mattress, box springs and mattress, which were on the floor, on her back, the surgeon said, by the trajectory of the bullet. And then they found her on the floor in the bathroom, because I'm sure she went straight there to figure out maybe how to stop the bleeding or something like that.
The bullet went into her lower abdomen and out through the top of her shoulder, hitting several organs inside. At one point, though, they did stop the bleeding and thought there was a chance she could survive.
They actually did and got her stabilized, and they were headed to ICU, which he explained to me is very, very cold, and that slows everything down, and he wanted to get her body temperature way down, and then something happened and she just crunched. I mean, he said basically she had just lost too much blood, that her heart couldn't keep beating.
The Hansens never could have prepared for the emotions they were feeling.
Just like, how did this happen? Is this real? It just felt surreal. Like, I just felt like I kept asking myself, how could this happen? Never, as a parent, do you ever imagine anything like this.
But something stood out to Kim, the 911 call Rachel made herself, and what she said on it.
Her exact words were, "I've been shot by someone I don't know."
Rachel's apartment was on the 3rd floor in the corner. It was an odd space for somebody random, a stranger, to just walk into and shoot her to death. Stranger homicides are extremely rare, and her mom knew that.
There was a very suspicious possibility of a lot of things.
My first question, who was the person subleasing Rachel's apartment? Did they leave willingly and without issue? Kim said there were rumblings of potential drug deals she learned from neighbors in the building.
The other resident said there were people coming and going from there all the time. And there had been many conflicts with other people that had apartments nearby. And the one reason she was trying to clean it so much was that just the walls, everything reeked of marijuana. Maybe they were mad that they had this little business going on, so to speak, and she had asked them to move out.
That was a fair thought as far as a motive went. Pretty quickly, though, authorities ruled this out after telling the Hansens they interviewed the subleaser and others. No new leads came from that. But there was another situation detectives needed to look at. It's May 31st, 5 days before Rachel was killed. As Rachel is packing up to move off the ranch, her dad and brother were helping too, getting ready to pick up her mare, Dash, and move her back to their home.
What happened was they took a trailer, they got all of her furniture and belongings, brought it back and unloaded it, and then my husband picked up the horse trailer and texted the people and said, I'm heading back with the horse trailer to pick up Dash and get her off your property. You know, I'll be there in half an hour or whatever. And the response he got back was, no need to come. She's been removed from the property, and here's the number of our attorney.
Turned out the two women running the ranch were angry at a situation Rachel's parents didn't know about.
Obviously, she was frantic and trying to find out where her mare was and trying to figure out how these people could do this legally. I was in Indiana, and my husband was talking to the attorney and trying to work something out. And basically, they were demanding that we pay the difference of what they felt they didn't get in this horse trade, which was $5,000. So they were trying to sort all of that out, and then she was killed.
Kim says the attorney then upped the cost to $7,500 to get Dash back because of vet bills, since she was recently bred. All of this was happening right after Rachel's death.
But at that point, having just lost her in this tragic situation, we were like, we don't even care. We'll pay whatever we have to have her horse back. That's all we have left of her.
They paid the money and got Dash back, but it was a really unsettling situation. Rachel mentioned in that 911 call she was shot by someone she didn't know. She obviously knew the women at the ranch, so it couldn't have been them, but Rachel's parents thought maybe they hired somebody.
The detective said that he investigated them, and his only response was, they have a ton of money. They had no reason to take Dash and hold her for ransom or kill Rachel over that. So they're not suspects, or they're not to be questioned anymore.
This is something that still haunts Kim, that maybe more was there because the situation was so bizarre.
I think it's a very real possibility, and it's also something I think was not investigated properly.
The Hansens aren't happy with how the investigation has gone. Kim says they've been working with the detective on the case, but feel he hasn't been forthcoming the way they would like. She said there was confusion on what kind of gun was used, claiming they were told a certain kind of gun at first, but when they questioned that, they felt the detective shied away from talking about it.
What's the truth? Was it this type of gun? Was it that? Like, it doesn't even matter. But what else is not being told truthfully or the way it should? I don't know. I just started really questioning a lot of that in the investigation.
She says the detective gave her and Todd his number and said to call or text if they heard anything, so they had his direct line. They really appreciated that. Just before Christmas, Kim said they were really struggling. How do you celebrate that holiday when a piece of your family is missing? They felt irrevocably broken. She said around 10 p.m. one night before the holiday, Todd texted the detective thanking him for investigating. He didn't get a response back, but the next time Kim had a meeting with the detective, it was just the two of them.
He said, by the way, I blocked your husband. And I said, why? What in the world? And he said, well, he was texting me at all hours of the night, like 2, 3 a.m. And I said to him, he has never been up at 2 in the morning since I've known him. We're the kind of people that don't even make it to midnight on New Year's. I said to him, that's not truth.
That bothered her, but she chose to respect it. One thing they've asked about in the investigation is cameras. Surely the complex had to have some sort of surveillance system, and in a world where so many have doorbell cameras, Kim assumed there could be video that might show something. Kim has asked about this on social media in community groups too.
When I put something out there about Rachel, people will say things like, I live 3 doors down and nobody ever came to ask if they could look at my Ring camera. Someone else said they've lived there for 7 years and they've asked for cameras to be installed in the apartment complex, and they never have been. So I don't know if they have cameras or not. The only thing the detective told me when I asked about cameras was that they were all fake. What's so frustrating is the lack of communication from the police department. The police chief never once has reached out to us. Or are they just trying to protect this, so to speak, perfect Gilbert community from, losing its reputation?
The Gilbert Police Department has recently been under fire for that in a different investigation. They've been severely criticized in recent months for how they've handled teen violence cases related to the group of teens and young adults known as the Gilbert Goons. The community has been vocal about how they feel it took the death of a teenager, Preston Lord, beaten to death at a Halloween party, for the Gilbert Police Department to reopen many teen violence cases they had closed due to, quote, lack of evidence. Most of these attacks have been documented by the attackers themselves in videos on Snapchat and other platforms. The police chief eventually started doing weekly press conferences about it, but not before parents exclaimed the department had swept these investigations under the rug. There is no known tie to the Gilbert Goons and Rachel Hansen's case, but Kim feels her daughter's case was kept fairly hush-hush by the same department.
I would really like the police department to be more transparent with the investigation, obviously without harming it, but they're not even actively investigating it anymore. But this did happen in Gilbert, and we have no answers. And she was just a young girl moving into an apartment. There are lots of kids moving into apartments around here, and everybody needs to be aware that this happened. We don't have a weapon, we don't have a witness, we don't have a motive. We didn't have anything. We didn't even have DNA because the person kicked the door with the bottom of his shoe.
As time has gone on, our station has kept reporting on this case.
1 year later, and we still don't know who shot and killed Rachel Hansen. There are no suspects and no one has been arrested.
That was our reporter, Alexis Dominguez. At one point, she talked to one of Rachel's friends, Cheyenne Walters.
There's not a single thing that I haven't questioned. I've questioned why, who could have done it, what could have caused it, was this an accident, was this planned for somebody else and they found her instead? I don't know those answers.
In February 2024, the police department turned the case over to Silent Witness for tips. People can call in or submit tips anonymously.
That's when they said we will not be actively investigating anymore. We will just turn it over to Silent Witness, and if we get a tip or a lead, we'll investigate, but there's nothing else we can do.
Now, there's a $2,000 reward for information through Silent Witness. That's a good thing, but it's been several months since that development with no new leads.
Somebody was either being paid to do this for whatever reason, to get rid of her, or the person was after the girl that has subleased from her. They somewhat resemble each other in that she also had long dark hair.
Could Rachel have been mistaken in the night for the girl who subleased from her? Possibly, but as of now, no new information has proven that to be true. I asked Gilbert Police about this case and where it stands. This is the response I got back from their public information office. Rachel Hansen's homicide is actively being investigated by our Criminal Investigations Division. This case continues to be of utmost priority for the Gilbert Police Department, and we understand how hard lengthy investigations can be on the families of victims. We can tell you that all tips and leads related to this investigation have been pursued. In February of this year, in partnership with Silent Witness, we again requested the public's assistance with any tips and information that could help us solve this case. We would appreciate any help that we can get with sharing information on the Silent Witness tip line 480-WITNESS and how tips and information related to this case can be submitted. The Hansens had Rachel's remains cremated, but they haven't been able to spread her ashes out yet. They feel they can't let go of her until there's closure and resolve in this case. Some days, it feels like that's so far away, but giving up isn't an option for them. Kim still feels Rachel's presence here, even on the darkest of days.
Oh, I talk to her all the time. Sorry. We have her mare and her little filly here because she had just bred her mare. So I spend a lot of time with them. I think she knows. So I would just want her to know that we'll never give up. We'll never give up trying to find answers. And we'll always love what she loved.
If you have any information about the murder of Rachel Hansen, please call Silent Witness or the Gilbert Police Department. True Crime Arizona, the podcast, is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney, and produced by Sergio Hernandez. It's a production of Arizona's Family, 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.